I'd like to call the meeting of the 2229 Main Street Oversight Committee to order. Second,
Second.
all approve. Say
Aye.
Aye, okay. Um, oh, my name is Ray Crudessa. I'm chair. Pam, who is on, is the clerk. You guys, who else wants to introduce yourself to?
David
Okay.
Rafik. I'm kind of half member, half observer from the Board of Health.
Great.
Bob Anderson, I'm observing. I'm
Okay.
the closest property owner to the slurry wall.
Okay.
I'm a friend of Doug's.
Upstream or downstream?
Friend of Doug's for maybe 40 years. Appreciate being here.
So, I did not bring any minutes. Pam, at some point we have to cycle back. You need to, minutes to figure out what we have and don't have.
I can't do that for this meeting, but I can do it for the next meeting.
No, but I agree. I'm just mentioning it so we can think about it too. There are minutes that you did complete that you did send to the program to the town that don't look like they were in the system, and I failed to tweak the town on, hey, Pam sent this to you on a certain date, and we haven't got that in there. We need to, next meeting schedule is March 20th. We typically meet on the third Friday of the month. Somewhat it's dependent on what documents we have received. In view of town meeting and stuff, I don't know if we want to meet in April. And we will also be circling back to at some point as part of the new business, the public meeting, the town that EPA is going to have, which also will be occurring in April. So do we want to schedule a date for April and just keep on pushing out the third Friday, and we can cancel meetings? It's easier to cancel. That's agreeable with everybody. Okay. I will put.
What's the date of the meeting for the public meeting again?
The shoots today. When is the election? Election is. Oh, looking at the wrong one. I'm looking at the wrong year. I apologize on this calendar. It's a little,
It says Thursday, April 2nd.
yeah, that's what I was, just the calendar I was looking at was the 25th, and that's so, yeah, because it was going to be, initially was scheduled for
Election day.
election day, which is Tuesday, March 31st. So it is now Thursday, April 2nd. So
Do we want to be meeting on March 6th to talk about the water quality again, sampling again, or are we going to finish that up today?
we can meet on March 6th in view of the fact I know that, well, I've not got comments from Len. And likewise, some people,
Yeah.
and you're not the only one, haven't really looked at it thoroughly, so therefore, so we want to schedule a meeting for March 6th to finish the water quality thing. And
the 2229 committee we're talking about now. Right?
Yep. And then we'll leave the 20th on the thing. It might get canceled. I will put a meeting in for April 17th, unless we want to meet sometime earlier than that after the committee meeting, but I'll just put April 17th for the moment. And we can likely to be canceled based on town meeting and other things, but we'll see what occurs there. And then and I'm just picking this date out as May 15th. As the third Friday, so, okay. Pam has, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Pam, reviewed thoroughly the water quality thing, and you want to, I have your comments, but do you want to discuss them?
I'm not sure thoroughly is what.
Okay.
And I don't actually have them in front of me, so if you want to just read them.
So Pam had two comments when she looked at this initially, so. For the figures mapping contaminant levels of individual volatilities, there is a vapor intrusion action level between the non-detect blue and the detectable but less than cleanup level green that does not appear on the figures. Functionally, this is a small subset. This is a small subset of green dots. It would be nice if the wells that have levels that would trigger a vapor intrusion investigation were marked on the figures so that we could visualize whether the footprint of the vapor intrusion risk is getting bigger or smaller. Having maps that show that this footprint is reducing over time would be helpful visually for risk communication. Okay, so that's number one. And then Pam, your second comment was Kim Caston of Green Action has consistently pointed out that the north edge of the organics plume is, in her opinion, poorly bound. And you put in parentheses, EPA disagrees. She points out that this area is as close to the Concord second division well as it is to the Acton's well field in the opposite direction. And then you additionally state, I'm not a groundwater expert, but it seems to me that the northern boundary of the plume looks well bounded in this data. Is that also the opinion of the committee's engineers? So those were your two comments.
Right.
Okay.
And the other thing that I think is important is that we actually look and see if we're happy with the PFAS sampling plan.
Okay. So. 1 second.
And that's not really the report, that's, the next.
Mm-hmm. And okay, has anybody, Doug, did you get a copy of this or can you locate it?
I didn't get a
Okay,
copy,
okay,
so I'm catching up now as to what's going on.
Okay.
I think those comments about the northern boundary should be clarified. I mean, if there's a
okay,
question about which way the plume business, the plume that's headed to the Acton well field was a discovery kind of by the way during the redesign of the whole plant business, and I was involved with recognizing that and helping to get something going. And they wound up putting in, as you may know, an interceptor well. There's no way to get that plume out of the ground, but they wanted to prevent it drifting into the catchment area of the Acton well. So they had to take some action. That might be, if we have a well in Concord on the other side of the property that has potential exposure, you really want to put in some observation points and define what's in the ground out there. Make sure we're not being invaded by some underground runoff in a way.
EPA's position has always been that that it is well bounded, that the data show that. And I can't actually tell what Kim's point is, but she keeps making that point. So I think it's reasonable for us to at least look through and see if it makes sense that the plume looks like it's well bounded, especially that north side.
Pam, and I need to go through this more thoroughly myself also. Where are you seeing Kim's comment? Is it in here somewhere that I missed? Or
No,
is it
Kim's comment has been there through the past
Okay.
couple of years. And EPA has always taken the position that it's that they believe that it's well bounded, so that we don't need to worry about that. And honestly, I look at that data and I can't see it going up again in that direction, certainly not in the way that it was going up towards the Acton well field. And even though it seemed like it was a sudden discussion of whether StarMet was part of the problem at the Acton well, that was a point that Mary Michaelman was making for years and years in the past, was that the data that was being shown by the Gray site could easily have been from another source across the river. So that was why it wasn't totally a surprise. It was a surprise that it got added to our remedy.
Okay.
It wasn't a totally new thing, and that's why I keep bringing up Kim's, because people kept bringing up Mary's, and it finally led to us more work being done there.
So,
It's not, I looked at this and I thought it was well bounded. I've looked at the
okay,
previous ones. Kim just keeps putting that comment in, and I think we shouldn't ignore it. So even though she's not from Concord, she's from Acton, it still is about Concord's water supply.
so my proposal at this point, especially if we're going to meet on March 6th, and I don't want to limit discussion. If I don't know if this will logistically work, I will make sure I send you the email I got from Kara with the link. I don't know if you found it or not.
I did.
Okay, I will
January
send it to you,
14th.
Doug, but likewise, me sending it to you probably won't work unless you actually were on the initial list, because you put in your email address that they have, and then you get a passcode back to put that number in to that email address. But I'll go send it to you. You can see if it works. If
Right.
it doesn't, we can reach out to Kara. I honestly don't remember how many megabytes data this is. Before we're done today, I can see if I have it on this laptop to determine that or not, but I don't tend to pull stuff down on this laptop, but it might be in my cloud for that one. So
It was sent on 1/14.
Okay.
No reference.
so do you have any comments then on this at this point? Okay, so and Pam, I don't know if you saw, I had sent an email out to Len last night, and that's what I was focused on, trying to see if he had any comments on this, but I will circle back with him on that and make sure, one, that he did receive it, and two,
can you forward my comments to him too? That you just
I will. You did send them to me, but I will re-forward them to him.
Okay.
When you sent
Okay.
it to Len and myself, so.
Okay.
Okay, yes, I will do that. Well, in two-part. One, you already sent it to him, but likewise, we are now discussing them at the meeting, so therefore, they're public to everybody. So it's
Right.
no concern about sending it to one's a person's opinions to somebody else on the committee, and public meeting law types issues, okay? Speaking of which, since I failed to do that, if there's nothing else on the annual raw water thing, except for people gather comments, and if you want to send them to me before that meeting, I will try to get them in a better format so that we can discuss that. We met on the 16th of January with Kara. There was only 3 of us present. I did confirm with the town clerk that does not qualify as a meeting. I made it clear that we did not vote on anything or do any formal business. It was just more of, how do you want us to handle minutes or no minutes for that type of item? We discussed with Kara at that time these upcoming meetings she's going to have. And she we discussed some of the logistics of getting our comments to back to her on the 100% design plan. So Bob, for your information, we had received the 100% remedial design for the Holden Basin. The work on that is going to occur next calendar year, starting March timeframe, I think, is when they constructed the
Basically a year.
Yeah, so basically, there were some delays, so didn't begin this year, won't begin this year. When that report, and Pam, correct me if I'm wrong on this one too, when that 100% gets done, that report will be likely made public of what they're going to do. There will be a town meeting sometime in the fall regarding the holding basin. Basically, the gist of it is they dig around the holding basin and they put a wall in and they cover the over to contain the material within it. So, and I've shared with the committee the thing that the EPA sent to the Maximus on comments, and then likewise I shared by email the comments that the EPA did not forward directly to the Maximus because she thought it didn't need to go in there, but she answered us regarding the sump pumps.
Oh, yeah.
One of the discussions we had is where were they located, and we did ultimately locate that. It refers to one sump pump, but looking at the drawings, it looks like there might be two, whatever. They cleaned the vehicles off within the containment of the holding basin and picked the slurry up to clean it out afterwards. And somewhere I grabbed it, and I'm not seeing it in here as I was doing this. What the other question was related to, that we'll see if I can find that momentarily. But
Was there any discussion of why the delay? Because they were originally shooting for putting the wall in this year.
yes, so
Acquiring the bentonite. I remember we talked about acquiring the wall materials.
the long and the short of it, without getting into the politics, is the EPA had some issues where they had delays in responding to the Maximus. So I think that is truly the underlying reason. So therefore, what caused, and the 100% thing, I'm making up these are my making up numbers that have no basis whatsoever. Let's say the delay was 2 months. I'm not saying that, I don't remember what it was, but let's say it's 2 months. That 2-month time period caused, well, everything paperwork could continue. That 2-month period would move it from March of this year to June, July.
They couldn't finish.
And they couldn't finish in the thing. So therefore, you need to start, their thought process is you need to start and finish in 1 year, in one construction time period. So that's
Makes sense.
I mean, it was not a week, but I think if the week was critical, that would have pushed it. It was months, but it's delay. So yeah. That being said, it was made clear that they are still doing soil work during this time period, and
Testing, discovery,
remediation for the most part. In
dig
addition,
up little hot spots they found, or what's that?
they're still cleaning up spots and stuff like that. And this circles back into the public meeting. What do we want to share with and likewise, I think in risk communication also, what do we think we should share with Kara or emphasize with Kara on what we think should be discussed in the meeting come April? It's supposed to be looking back at what's happened so far, but and they're not going to talk about, in theory, the holding basin. But one of the other things they are doing is, as they're, I have it here, but can't lay my hand exactly where it would be in the document. But they talked about getting the soil ready around the holding basin to do the work, and this is giving them more time to move in that direction to not only get it for the holding basin, but when they get done type thing after the holding basin. So therefore, allowing more prep time, allowing them, I think, more time to integrate the discussion of the plans of how they're gonna do this. I mean, as we discussed with Carol last month. She says she's no expert in this and, she's trusting her experts on this stuff. It's, you're moving a lot of dirt around and it's not all pristine dirt, so therefore, washing down and the logistics of that type of stuff, so.
So this gives us the opportunity of another summer where we can be doing tours and getting people comfortable with this site.
Yes,
We're anticipating that when they start the holding basin work, they're really going to stop hosting guests if they can. I mean, major parts of the site are going to be blocked off and inside a cleanup zone where you have to be an engineer with so many credentials for being a site person to actually enter safely. And they're going to enforce that to the point that EPA will be outside of the site as well. So if we're going to want people to come see the site, we want to plan some visits if we can this summer. For
right,
just communication.
which ties into, what we think Kara should discuss is, I know she's looking back, but on the April meeting is in partly going forward for risk communication, how we can make sure people know what's going to occur the following year and that this is good and we're not done, but they're going to be pumping water forever type stuff. But I mean, we're getting, it's a major part, so.
And as part of what Pam mentioned about community tours and, community members can put eyes on the site and just understand what's going on in real time. Is that something that we've asked her to, kind of mention at that April 2nd meeting? Or is that something that the committee would do separate from that?
Well, I think, we got a month, 40 days.
Yeah.
I think we should continue having a conversation. Then likewise, the other part of that, and you were on the previous committee, device is pulling the town more into how they wanted to be involved in discussions on that. At this point, thank you for coming, but I mean, we don't write, as we're dealing with this logistics of do we have Zoom or not? One of the questions by the assistant town clerk was, well, do you generally have people listening to the meeting? And it's like, we do sometimes, but it's onesie twosies, and they're generally crew or somebody from finance committee. It's not like the general public that hasn't been actively involved in it previously type stuff, so.
Megan was the point person for the town on the other committee. Who is the point person from the town on this one? You talked about assistant town clerk.
Well, okay, so I'm going to answer your question without answering your question here. I was reaching out to the assistant town clerk on when we post meeting notes and stuff like that. The assistant town clerk is the one who does. You send it to town meeting, whatever it is, at Concord, the email address, but it tends to be Lori Austin who.
Okay.
Day in, day out type stuff. And likewise, if people are delinquent on finishing training or stuff like that, that's her. So she's clearly more on the administrative side. I am delinquent, and I probably should reach out to Megan in that's who Paul mentioned for something, but I don't know if there is anybody. I mean, we like your committee, Board of Health, from day in and day out, helping us run meetings, the Board of Health is overseeing us. Versus and I apologize, but Megan's assistant, she's not, is she assistant town manager? I don't remember her exact title.
I think she's the assistant.
I mean, yeah, but I don't know if it's assistant or second or so, whatever it is, but
Yeah.
So, but from the building on the green, I don't know if there is a particular person that's keeping an eye on us type thing.
The reason I ask this is the risk communication stuff will come to a head around acquisition of the site.
Mhm.
Until then, it's us doing this in onesies and twosies. A handful of people will come to this meeting, the EPA meeting. How many? We have 40, 30 people. That was pretty terrific to the town meeting our previous committee had, but that was about acquisition, right? And the relationship between the community and the acquirers has to come from the town, not us, not this committee.
Right.
We're a
This
resource.
has been,
Excuse me.
this committee
There-
was, oh,
Okay.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Pam.
so this committee was originally set under the health department. And so in theory, the whoever is head of the health department is our staff for the committee. And it was supposed to be, you know, us reporting regularly to the um the Board of Health. But that was based on this idea that what we would be doing with the site mostly in the meantime was the cleanup, and it was a matter of the health of the town that we were worried about. So David, I mean, I think that the idea that maybe we should be changing who our masters are for this committee is not an unreasonable thing at this time. We're getting to the point where, honestly, a lot of the health work has been done already. We've decided what needs to be done at the site to meet health requirements, and the questions of just making sure that work gets done is much smaller than thinking about how the land would be used now. So it's possible that we want to think about convincing the town that we want to be part of something bigger, like the planning department.
I would put it this way. Ultimately, the people who continue to have concerns about the health and safety of the site will be the largest part of the challenge to communicate about the site. The rest of it will be cost and all the same stuff that the town has to do, and that's not risk communication, that's town politics communication.
Process.
The risk communication part will continue to be the challenge of, or the opportunity both, to communicate about how much has been done to make it safe and livable,
Right.
right? Cadillac conditions, et cetera. That will need to be spearheaded because it's an at that point, it's at the point where it comes to a head is acquisition, not down here. And that's a town official, probably higher than the planning department. That has to be an ongoing relationship. That has to be somebody taking it under their wing and starting to have conversations with the people who have concern, so that they know what the town's been doing, and that all this is here, all of what we're doing to support the oversight of the cleanup and so forth has been in action and all that, so that when the volcano boils up to the top, right, that relationship has already been started by whoever the appropriate town senior official is.
Right.
So it's a relationship building thing. It's not necessarily, Pam, like who's officially we're reporting
No,
to
right, yeah, right.
and all of that. But we do need to encourage them to start. I think we're early still. Because the attention is only going to come when it really
Right.
becomes a more townwide thing about acquisition. But to start having that relationship building happening. So a conversation with someone like Megan or somebody at the town, I'm happy to do that if you want. You know, just an informal conversation that you guys have to start to be thinking about who's going to be the senior town person who's been looking out for all of this stuff to make sure that when it comes to should we acquire, the relationship with the concerned people's been worked on and exists.
Right.
And there's trust.
Right, and one of the
Excuse me.
benefits we do as this committee is that one of our former members or is now a select board, so therefore Paul has some history with both your committee and our committee and working with Megan on this stuff. We can reach out and just sort of reiterate. Here's where we are again. I don't remember who was on the correspondence and who wasn't, but as discussed, initially, we're gonna have a meeting on Tuesday, which was election night. And Paul was the one who said, no, let's not do that.
The
So,
town hall's gonna kind of be busy that night.
yeah, so,
There's gonna be people in the room.
hopefully, right, so,
My suggestion would be, and Paul has, as Pam has, shepherded this forever and ever and ever. And as a result, if I'm over here, a skeptic about chemicals and radiation and all of that, I could see him as somebody who wants to get it bought, an advocate for a side.
okay,
So yes, now at the moment, the conversation is appropriately through him. But and I've mentioned this to him and I mentioned this to a previous committee. As it moves towards acquisition, it should be somebody town employee
versus,
rather than a person who might be seen as an advocate for
okay,
it, which Paul might.
I'll
And
have to
think
say
these are
I
all
agree
work
with
on
that
that.
because I've noticed that where people originally thought of me as someone who was the most protective and the most wary, and now are looking at me as having bought the line from everyone by
Yeah, drunk the
having been
Kool-Aid and
listening to
wanting it
them
to
for so
happen and stuff.
well,
And
and Pam, I'm being somewhat.
and so I agree. I think it should be town staff. I think that's a good idea, David.
So, and part of it gets back to risk communication and perception. And for you, Pam, with some respect, you spoke at town meeting on that. I know, totally unrelated issue, but when they were putting the fields in for behind the high school, and I called the question, I had people on both sides that were totally convinced that I was a plant by the other side.
that mistrust needs to be respected. It needs to be recognized in advance and planned for and respected and built into who this town official or the
Yeah,
appropriate person reaches out to have the conversation.
right, so,
People. There'll be a small group of people and to reach out to them. As independent a person on this project as possible would be the better.
yeah, so.
So that puts us in a position too where we want to be sure that we're briefing this person regularly from our committee. I mean, would they be expected to come to every committee meeting?
I wouldn't think so. From where I sit as kind of an overseer on part of the Board of Health, because I've only recently joined all of what you guys, some of this hairy detail is way unnecessary. For
Yeah.
their
Yeah, right, yeah,
knowledge.
yeah.
Way, way, way below the weeds. They need a big picture update every once in a while. An informal, no scheduled anything, hey, let's have a coffee. I'll
Yeah.
come to your office. Here's what's the latest. They're not going to do the wall until next year. Let's start thinking about tours. See you next year. That level. Okay, my suggestion.
So, okay, so, I can reach out to Megan on that and see. Actually, I will reach out to the town manager, copy Megan, in that it will likely be, but likewise, it's not my call who the town wants to pick at this point, to do that
Right.
position, so, yeah.
So I actually think though that you should make a point that having somebody senior and somebody who is expected to be around for a while
Yeah.
Yeah, right,
is really helpful. There's been a lot of changeover in the leadership of the town and a lot of people who've been in and out pretty fast. So
And that's hard for them to predict, but that's
Yeah.
a good thing to encourage.
yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. We don't care what their background is. In fact, it may be some benefit that they don't have any
Correct,
technical background.
correct.
So,
They're gonna be the point person on the acquisition question
yeah,
or a intermediary. They won't be the point person. Ultimately, that'll even be higher. But they'll be the intermediary with the concerned people over the acquisition stuff. So
right.
they don't need to know about that night. Piezoelectric monitors and slurry and shit.
Right, yeah. Well, we don't want them to be able to talk engineer.
Better that they don't. The conversation will be shorter, clearer,
Absolutely.
and more relevant to what the people on the other side of the table give a damn about.
Yeah, so. Okay.
Well, and we do want a person though who knows who to talk to in the town about each of these things.
Yeah,
Somebody
so,
who's really aware of all the functions of the town, so that they know who in DPW to talk about, transportation and
right.
engineering and stuff like that. So it is time for the town staff to be taking on more of a role, I think, in this.
At least raise their awareness to start
Yeah.
raising that toward the acquisition question that's now nearer. So
Okay. We're sort of talking both public meeting and risk communication at this point. Is there anything, I mean, I have not had a conversation with Kara. Besides that we know when the meeting is gonna occur and that she's gonna be focusing backwards. Is there anything in particular that we think people within the town would like to focus on? I mean, there's the water, there's the soil, we've done a lot. We've removed the slabs. We've taken X amount of cubic yards of soil away. We've redone this and redone that.
I would encourage Kara, I mean, I read a couple of her correspondences to us. And she seems to make a point of the holding basin not being a topic of discussion. She seems to go out of her way to
Yeah,
say,
I know, and
right?
yeah,
That's it. And your explanation of why the delay probably happened explains a lot in my mind about why she would prefer, I'm adding 2 and 2 and getting 5, but I could see an EPA person who might have had a hand in the delay not wanting to talk about that problem. I would encourage them to talk about plans down the road. And when the holding basin is going to be capped, when's it all going to be done? People sitting in the audience will want to know that question. That's a step in that. So somehow to talk about steps to come and schedule to come.
right. So
Not the wall, the basin specifically, but that's in there. The what's to come, and that's a big step of what's in there. So encouraging her to reassure the town people who might attend about what's to come, including the basin.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but ultimately, right, there's certain things that are going to go on forever, like the water treatment type stuff.
Yeah.
But likewise, what is the plan for? I'm not sure who's going to continue the water treatment, but for Demaxis to walk away, that they're wash our hands, we're done. We've gotten the site to where we need to. There are some continued maintenance stuff. Looking for that schedule, even if it just says, in the whole basin will be done from this time to this time, and after that, and I'm not sure this is a true statement, we are basically done except for this, which will take us into 28, but by making this up, I don't know this, by October 2028, the site will be completed except for the continuous stuff as we need to do. And I don't know that's a true
So
statement.
there is, I'm recalling, and Pam might remember the name of it, there's a document that the EPA and everybody has to sign that says it's clean enough to sell. I forget what the hell the name of that is, Pam, maybe you remember what that is.
I don't remember it either, but it's like
Right, it's like an official statement of ready. We're clean, go, sell. That's a step, that's a legal moment. That is if you want to acquire it now, you can. Now, the legal thing's going on all along, the negotiation between the town and the Justice Department and whoever, that's all happening, but it can't happen until that document gets signed. Everybody says clean, whatever the hell that document means, right? And it's got some acronym, everything the government does. That is, in my mind, the go point on any, okay, now you can. Now, the conversation about whether we should and can and how is going on all along. So we're ready to go at that point. Thank you for all these other committees. But when's that going to happen?
Yeah.
That's a question that you could put to Kara. What's the timing look like for the Go,
So
document.
So we're all in agreement that while she wants to focus on what's occurred, we think as part of this April meeting, she still needs to. Not in detail, but give us a schedule, you know, a couple.
Yeah, the town wants to know what the hell's gonna happen, not what has.
Yeah,
Not just what has. but
Right.
What's going.
So,
Right.
so in that timetable, there's two pieces of it. There's one of the when they're ready to say it has been remediated, it is time, it is ready for redevelopment point. But there's also a point before that where we still have input into how it is remediated. In other words, we still have that point to say we want this level and flat so that we can put a building here versus we want it planted with the occasional tree and having some shape to it. And we want, this is where we want a platform put in sort of thing. Do we want her to talk about that at all? About what decisions for remediate for the restoration are still available to us?
Well, I think we should ask, getting back to the timeline, one that, and I don't know, Pam, likewise, one is, you need to tell us by June 15, 2026, what you want of those things, or we're gonna continue our planning, and it's gonna be a change order that we're not willing to pay for to make that changes. I mean, we've had discussions of, well, if we give them information on this, they'll be able, as they're doing something, to put lines down.
Bruce made clear that there will be a time at which that window closes.
Right,
And we
Yeah.
should know that.
yeah,
We should figure that out. I want
And
to
Kara should allude to that because it will encourage town engagement in what happens next. And it'll bring people to the table and, hey, we could still shape how like the grading is gonna go on the
Right.
property until
yeah,
next August.
right, so.
That brings some people who might, neighbors, remember, into the process. That would be something to encourage Kara to very loosely stress that the town can have a say in how that work is ongoing until a certain point.
Right, yeah,
And
so-
make clear that roughly when that certain point is.
okay, yeah,
So I also noted that if you're talking to Kara anyway, Ray, if you could ask about 144, 1440 Main Street, that production thing was supposed to make be a source for clean fill for the site, as opposed to using other areas of the site like the hillside for clean fill.
yeah, and
In the process of that work that they've been doing, they discovered a burn pit and they're doing a cleanup.
Yeah,
yeah,
asbestos, I think it was, but I seen the paper, something like that.
Oh, is it asbestos burn pit?
Something, well, you don't burn asbestos, that's why you use asbestos, but yeah,
You can,
for some reason.
materials don't have asbestos and
Yeah,
residual is
At least,
asbestos. Yeah.
I don't remember, it was
nailed or something.
Although it didn't seem like it was a major,
It doesn't look like it's a lot of dirt.
Yeah.
Or the pit is a big thing, but you're right, Ken, they're now doing a cleanup.
But
So-
the goal before was that dirt was going to be clean. We don't necessarily want dirt that's been coming from another toxic waste site used for fill. Do they want to still use part of the hillside? Is that something the town would want to still think about?
so, and maybe I'm thinking of some other time. I got the impression, and maybe this is my memory, and it may be totally wrong. I got the impression they weren't using anything from 1440 Main Street from what
that's what I thought too. I know being part of the NRC previously, we had talked about, Mourner's Pond tying into that, if things happen up there, nothing's happening up there. But along with that, I thought the EPA or the Maximus said, we're gonna obtain fill from a, kind of a third party.
Yeah.
We don't want to get involved with taking fill from over here or over there.
But
Yeah.
that, I will
Let's
ask
get
the
a handle
question.
on what is happening with that then. Can you talk to Kara about the fill?
Yeah,
Just asking.
I'll ask her, and she might say, I have no clue about it because she's got two projects. And it was this one, and I don't know what the other one was, but it ain't that, or anything
And
related.
it might be a timing issue too, right?
Yeah.
When they need fill, that other fill might not be
Yeah.
ready to go at the 1440 site or vice
Yeah,
versa.
so, okay, I will ask the question. So,
So
okay,
Ed and Doug, one of the things that we had talked about very early on was potentially that hillside that is between the entrance to Starmet and the entrance to Forest Ridge Road um on Route 62. It's got a bunch of trees on it. It is clean fill. It was never touched by the property. And if we wanted to put um housing on that site, or reuse it for housing purposes, that them using that hillside as fill for and restoration materials for the rest of the site would make it less likely that contamination would come to the site, especially in terms of invasives, because there aren't invasives on that hillside now. But a lot of people said, oh, trees along Route 62, we love seeing that. So maybe that's that was considered out of the question before, but it was also because there were other sources fairly reasonably. You don't want to be trucking dirt in from Idaho to go to this site, and it has really stringent limits because we have really tight numbers for what is considered clean at this site. We really did convince them things that aren't um so require aren't as required. We have stringent limits at this site that might not be other places in the country. So
I don't remember the hillside comment, so that, I don't know if I was, well, I was gone or whatever, but I
yeah,
will circle back on that, okay.
we talked about using the hillside there as, cutting into the hillside, leveling the hillside, and it would be prepared for building as part of its restoration, but that material could then be used other places in the site for fill.
Okay, so,
Just out of curiosity, as this has been going along, has there been any conceptual planning on this site for future uses? I know people are cleaning it so you could actually do residential up there, so those standards are already, in place, but has planning board or anybody else looked at just general planning criteria that would also inform how the site wants to be?
So
potentially-
if you look at the committees where committee websites are, there's another committee, the 2229 reuse committee. There are
Yeah.
reports there that describe that. And basically they came up with this idea that we should integrate the area around the pond, the bog into our trails so that our people could get
Yeah.
from trails in the community in there to look at that. That the area inside the sort of ring road where the business is, that is our primary development area for
Yeah.
whatever kind of
Okay.
mixed use, whether it's municipal, whether it's um, something else, whether there's housing in there or not, that was basically looked at as being a potential development site for, whether it was a field house or offices or places for DPW to park or things like that. The area close to Forest Ridge Road that backs up to like Minuteman Arc, back there is a utility pathway already, and there is an access way that's cleared that isn't a road, but is sort of a secondary way in and out of the site. And that utility pathway, putting batteries for solar there might be a very reasonable thing to do. It's right across the street from one of our solar fields. It's close to our substation at the end of Forest Ridge Road. And if we put solar on tops of buildings or in fields at our site, that would be an acceptable, reasonable thing. Other areas that back up to Forest Ridge Road, there are some of those we talked about potentially they could in the future be housing.
There are maps.
And basically this idea of that front parcel with
But
the
to answer your question, no.
Okay, fair enough.
Has the town officially at
Yeah.
that level? No. They were engaged in the research that we did. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
and the other thing is that they have a committee right now that is doing review of all the different sites, especially
You're right.
MCI
Yeah.
Concord. And they
So
have
maybe-
not really looked at this site compared to the attention that they've given MCI Concord.
Gotcha.
which circles back to the question of when is Bruce's deadline for input for, you know,
Yeah,
what are we,
Shaping the remaining remediation that we could
Yeah.
shape.
yeah, so.
We spoke to the committee spoke to the planning department. There were some informal conversations with Public Works. There was a little bit of conversation with public safety. They might want to move their offices. It gets into all of what the town might want to do in the future. But the short answer to your question, Ed, is no, the town is not as a government agency really been involved in laying out any kind of plans for what it might be used for.
gotcha, okay. Yeah,
And there are town staff who don't like the idea of us moving DPW over there, who feel like they don't want to work there because they think it's dangerous.
Another part of the risk communicating.
yes, there you go.
Anywhere where there's concern about the risk is risk communication as opposed to legal stuff. And that's a common concern that arises amongst people who don't want to work on a former hazardous waste site. Wherever these brownfields are, and there are a zillion brownfields,
Okay.
you know, with hospitals on them and all sorts of stuff.
A lot of you.
And those become tools for the risk communication, but that's another
Yeah.
depends, you know,
Right.
factor when that gets closer, not now.
So. We've bantered around both the public meeting and the risk communication. Is there anything else on those at this point? I'm gonna move to public comments. Do you have any comments?
No, I
Questions
think,
or?
I think in building that slurry wall and all the containment and so on, safety is the big concern.
Yeah.
I mean, we've lived on our property for over 40 years, so we've been through a lot of changes, a lot of development. So I
Yes,
think
you said you live like next to it, but what?
29 Maplewood Circle and Thoreau Hills. So I look through the woods. I can see where the slurry wall is gonna be.
Mm,
But, you know, we're concerned about noise.
Yeah,
About traffic, about air pollution of any sort, contamination. There used to be a big sensor on my lot, right on the edge of my lot, so. Air quality.
air monitor, okay.
Yeah.
I will tell you regarding, I think noise was the particular one, right, from discussion, is that. In just general terms, as they build this wall around it, they build every other panel in initially. And then they interfill with these other panels to make the circle, it's not a circle, but the enclosure around the thing.
Right.
And they will be digging down deeply to do this. As I understand it currently, when they start a panel, they want to finish that panel in that day period. Because they're dealing with concrete and pumping slurry in and out. So it was mentioned, I'm not saying it's gonna happen, that they may go later than what we would normally think work scheduled, so therefore that will be a question, I think, when we get farther along, to get some more details from them. Realistically, what do they think is gonna happen on those type things? You know, I'm making this number up because I don't have it in front of me now. Is it 24 panels or is it more than that?
I bet there's more than that,
So,
I bet there's probably like. There's some of the panels, aren't they like 12 feet in length or something like that, so I think there's.
So there's two phases that will bother neighbors. Digging the trench, that's not panels, that's continuous digging the trench before you have the hole ready to put in. And they may do it sequentially, but I doubt it, because bringing the bentonite and stuff is probably, they'll probably separate it, but I don't know.
no, they will literally dig the trench and fill it concurrently because it's.
I think they batch everything.
Dig and fill,
outside.
dig and fill, dig and fill, dig and fill, dig and fill.
Yeah,
Yep.
and it'll be, so one space, next one space, whatever, and go all the way around, and it's gotta be an even number, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then.
Oh, yeah, because they don't want the hole to fill in and
Right.
collapse after they've dug it, they want to be ready to fill it.
They'll probably do that lead, you know, that lead.
The surface.
Wall, the surface,
Oh,
right, so that they have the guy put in to drop the machinery into the deeper hole for the panels.
I've been listening with a neighbor's ear in mind.
Okay.
The
Thank
one
you.
key thing that I do see them taking care of, one, the neighbors' behalf, is dust control.
Oh, yeah.
I think they'll
So
have,
that-
I think they'll have that down though, because, you know.
They,
again,
I mean,
it's
that's very
low walls.
actively planned for in the thing to minimize, right? We're showing up this way, you can't eliminate anything,
Absolutely.
but you're not gonna have clouds and clouds and clouds.
Yeah, I mean, slowly wars will occur in downtown Cambridge, Boston, right? So they have,
Well, those are walls, but I mean, the digging up
no,
the
but I'm
parapet.
saying the dust control,
All of
I
that
think they've
is-
got that down. Just
and-
given the proximity of so many of these slurry walls happening
all over the
in
place.
close proximity to people and buildings and
Yeah,
sites.
but it is an active component of what is
Yeah.
planned
Very
for.
much so.
I'm sorry, well.
They're actually really,
So there's no dust.
Yeah.
Well, surface, you know,
The
there's
surface.
soil disturbance
Yeah.
and whatever there is,
It'd be
they,
minimal.
they're trying to minimize.
There'll still be midnight around. It'll be wet and
That will be.
it won't be a problem.
Yeah, I think relatively.
That's not an issue.
a lot more of in the past, what they used to control dust, the monitor that you had back there was a dust monitor, not a uranium monitor. And so whenever they saw dust, they would stop work, they would wet things down, and you balance this thing of wetting things down means that you have more wet waste to dispose of. This part of the procedure is basically a slurry procedure where things are wet. So you are going to see a lot more of the wet stuff, a lot less of a dust problem. You know, the dust problem might be when they're moving the machinery around where you have surface dust, and that is already at a much lower level than the material that they're digging down to. When they're concerned about exposure for the employees who are working there, they're concerned about that stuff that's down there next to bedrock where the concentrations are higher. They work in Tyvek suits when they do it, and they're going to be monitoring that very carefully. So I don't think that's one of your problems. The digging that they're doing, you're probably not going to notice it at all when they're digging through dirt. It's when they get to the point when they're digging through bedrock at the bottom of each slab that they're digging down. They dig like a dotted line around and dig straight down a 20-foot wall. In most places they are banging into bedrock at the bottom, and they're keying it into the bedrock 5 feet at the 3 to 5 feet at the bottom. So that breaking up the bedrock, that might be something that you notice. But I'm going to point out that in the past 2 years, they've been breaking up the foundations of the old building and disposing of them, and they haven't had a single complaint about noise. And they were prepared for that. They were expecting to hear from neighbors about that. And Paul Bum, who's our person, you know, who he has family that back up to the site also, who noticed trees being removed, but never noticed bedrock being these deep foundation structures being broken up on the site. So I'm thinking that you may notice activity at the site late, but you probably will not have your house shake because of it or notice it because of that. You'll notice it because of lights. I don't know whether you'll notice it because of noise. Have you been noticing the noise already?
We've noticed noise for 20 years. You know.
Okay.
Trucks
coming.
and banging, but we take it for granted. This is a good thing. You know,
Yeah.
cleaning it up. There's progress. It's wonderful.
The banging you've heard, of course, is on the surface, so that
Right.
sounds for the traveling. The banging in the bedrock's down in this hole.
Right.
It might see their vibration at worst case, I think.
How many trucks?
Yeah,
How many trucks?
it's good.
It's
Fine.
The surface. It's I would say it's standard loud construction noise, but I wouldn't say it's not like they're banging piles endlessly, right? Which you can hear for a long way away.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, our kids all survived the rebuilding the high school and the schools and stuff. And there was a lot of pile driving and
Yeah. Do it.
Now, the other big concern we have, of course, is future use.
Oh, yeah, of course.
right.
Conversation for another day, right?
And another group, it's not us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, of course. So,
you know, is this
I thought
something?
that early.
You do want to get
Because-
going
Right.
with the people who have concern about the safety of it. even earlier, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, the practicality is that there's still some contaminated ground under there, and you don't want any future use to be digging into it.
Breaking into
And
it.
the only way
The
to prevent
procedures
that is.
for all of that.
Oh, yeah, I think that'll be
yeah.
a very high bar in terms of just.
Those areas are all marked. If anybody's gonna build around there, they have to get permits, there's supervision, there's all sorts of responsibility laid out legally. If you hit anything that's still a mess. But yes, that concern is gonna be there,
Yeah,
and those relationships getting going on reuse for
that's
the
right.
neighbors.
I don't think it
It's
should be
important.
a housing development or anything industrial. I think it should be just left as a grassland with solar panels on it and used as a,
Read the reuse report.
well,
Yeah.
I don't know, I've had time to contemplate this, and I've dealt with construction my whole career, so I understand what's going on. But I really don't think that the town should be approving a use that involves any digging into the ground, because I think in the past, the EPA had something like a 3 foot blanket of soil over a contamination level. And I picture somebody in the future going out there, and I just recently put in a tree, and they'll dig down for a bowl and then put a 4 or 5 foot deep pit there with dirt. So they'll penetrate that 3 foot layer and wind up into the soil that's theoretically contaminated. You have no control over that.
There are,
But
Well,
so
there are extensive controls over it,
well,
built into the,
I know that's on
legalities.
paper, but the practicality is people are always gonna be digging down into that ground. We shouldn't allow a use that involves that. And something like
Well,
a solar panel
that's a
field to me is a that we should have a benevolent dictator now that can say it's a solar panel field. And that's it.
Well,
Right.
I want to point
Yeah.
out that
Yeah.
though that this site is not homogeneous across the site. There is a holding basin area that's going to have 3 feet of dirt on top of it that you don't want to dig into and will get policed forever. But there are other areas on the site where there has never been contamination, like that hillside that would be great fill, for instance, and would be a great place to locate housing right along Main Street, just like the houses across the street and up the street and down the street from it. There are areas on this site that had surface contamination where nothing is below there, and we have wells and we have soil samples to show that there was nothing down there. And part of what they're cleaning up to is 10 feet of clean fill on top of any site that's been excavated, whether they found stuff there or not. You know, if they removed it, they're putting 10 feet of clean stuff on top of it. So Doug, I'm not sure that we necessarily want to treat the whole site that way. Bob, I was interested in knowing what you would think of other uses at the site. Would you find town offices or dump trucks or things like that good or bad to be at the site?
Well, the concentration of housing going into the whole area is significant. Like on Main Street, across from Wendy's, there's a huge development.
Yeah, right,
Up
by Spencer Road, there's that.
Up Pine, is it Pine Ridge? There's a whole development off of Pine
Right.
Ridge, Black Birch, that whole area. There's another whole building development. There's the building development that exists off the end of Thoreau Hills that's next to Thoreau Club.
Right,
Yeah, the concentration of housing.
Yeah.
Is huge,
Yeah.
and the traffic is gonna be a problem, it already is.
Yeah.
So that ought to be part of the considerations.
So your concern is about traffic, about trucks going in and out, about noise from
About
that.
congestion in that
Right.
part of Concord. And then you have what's going on in West Concord where they've leveled the land and they're putting in, I don't know how many units.
Yeah.
That, leveling the land is not something we would support at all. And a little hill with trees on it would be welcome if we could save it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Correct my statement. There are 44 panels total, and
Good.
I'm not looking at the whole drawing. I just tried pulling up they vary in length or across the top from like 10 or something to like 25 feet, but each
How
panel,
thick are they? Does it say there? Just curious.
Be
the,
about 3 feet.
Usually, yeah.
there's a slurry part. Let me see if I can pull that up here too and find that drawing.
We're just.
And I did,
Yeah.
so you're right, Doug, it's 3 feet is the panel, and then at the upper part is, they have on the top sort of like things that as they initially build it to put the stuff through that have an additional thickness.
The
So-
guide wall.
The guide walls, initial guide walls at the top, yeah.
A 3 foot, 4 foot deep concrete guide wall, so that when they dig, they have a trench. The alignment is controlled by the placement of those guide walls to begin with,
Okay.
and then the
Yeah.
digging apparatus, the hydromill goes down between the guide walls and turns its way down as deep as you want to go.
So 3 to 4 feet thick, the wall.
The width is,
Yeah.
yeah, typically around
Cool.
30 inches.
So,
And that's a conventional routine.
Yeah.
The Central Artery was miles of,
Oh my God,
yeah,
you wanted the cement contract for that, Jack.
yeah,
Okay.
and,
Boston sand.
yeah, and the question, going back to the question about the sumps, is when they're cleaning off the machines, it will occur in the middle of the basin. They'll spray them down and take the stuff off of that and treat that, but that will be within the area that contained of the holding basin. So, as they're doing this, so,
Right.
okay,
No, I think that will work very well. I was the one that recommended initially the use of the slurry wall. I'm so pleased that it went that way.
Okay.
The original way that was proposed was not going to be technically feasible and reliable. So I'm glad what we have, the slurry wall and the details of that are conventional.
Okay.
There's miles and miles of that in the city.
okay. So if we're getting close to 12, and I know that the offices will start closing up, so.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Get
Bring the
right
PM.
where you were going.
Right.
So,
Got it.
thank you.